بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Previous dars we talked about where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives two examples for the different types of munafiqeen. The first group were those munafiqeen and the hypocrites in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, who were dipped in such nifaq and hypocrisy that they were never even thinking about accepting Islam. And the second group were those people who were 50-50. If they saw Islam in a good state, they would accept Islam, and until Islam wasn't in a good state, until they didn't conquer different lands, they were not ready to accept. And then ayah number 20, Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ayah 20, 21, 20 and 21, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about His might, His qudra. And He named a couple of things that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can take care of. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that Allah who has made the earth for you, firashan, a bed, was-samaa bina'an, and He made the sky, وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ. He makes it rain, and from that rain He creates crops, He creates vegetables, He creates fruits. And we talked in detail about regarding these ayat, where no person is capable upon bringing rain from the sky. No person is capable upon, from that same water and rain, no person is capable upon bringing forth fruits. In the next ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives an open challenge to the world. You see, hidayah, guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, depends on two things. Guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala depends on two things. Number one is tawheed. And number two is risala. Tawheed and risala. You can't have tawheed and not have risala. So in order for you to accept hidayah, to accept guidance, firstly you have to submit to two things. Number one is tawheed, the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that behind everything is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number two is risala. In ayah 20 and 21, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala discusses the first one, tawheed. Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu, O people, u'budu rabbakum, worship your Lord. Alladhi khalaqakum. Is that one ayah? وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. Worship that Allah who created you and He created the people before you. There is no person that's capable upon creating someone. You can't just have something come to life. If you have a watch that you want to fix and it's broken and you put it in a box, it doesn't just magically come together. It doesn't just magically come together. Similarly, we weren't just born. The tree didn't just come out. It didn't magically give fruits. There is someone behind it. And in the next ayah, in ayah number 23, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the second one, which is risala, where He's going to explain that in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the kuffar used to say to the Prophet that this is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's word. The Quran is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's word. In fact, you have either made it or you went to someone else that made it for you. It's fabricated. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ, and if you are in doubt, raib, doubt, مِمَّا نَزَّلْنَا, regarding that which we have revealed, عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا, upon our servant, meaning Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ, then bring forth a surah like it. وَدْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُمْ, and call for it your supporters, your helpers. مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ, besides Allah. إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ, if you are truthful. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ, और अगर तुम शक में हो मिम्मा नज़्ज़लना उस बारे में जो हमने नाजिल किया अला अब्दिना हमारे बंदे पर यानी मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम फ़अतू बिसूरतिन मिन मिथली बस ले आओ एक सूरत उस जैसी वदउ शुहदाअकुम और बुला लो अपने मददगारों को मिन दूनिल्लाह अल्लाह ताला के सिवा इन कुंतुम सादिकीन अगर तुम सच्चे हो. If you are truthful, because the people used to say this is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's word. So if anyone in that matter, if it's an actor, if it's an artist, if it's a painter, if it's a doctor, anyone that makes something or anyone that does something great in history and history records it, someone will always come later on that can copy it. It's not something that you can't copy. If it's literature, you always have these people that produce very good literature. It's not something you can't compare to. If you have a great doctor in one time, you can have a different doctor maybe in a different era, 100 years later or whatever. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here that if you claim that this is not my word, then bring something like it. If you're claiming this is not my word, then bring something like it. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ If you are in doubt, مِمَّا نَزَّلْنَا regarding that which we have revealed, عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا upon our servant, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِ then bring something like it. The biggest miracle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the Quran. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had many different miracles. For example, water gushing from his fingers, the time where the army was thirsty, didn't have water. So there was water gushing forth from the fingers of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In some riwayat, the trees used to make salam to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the famous hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's mimbar, before the mimbar was actually made, he used to lean on a trunk of a tree. And when the mimbar was made, the trunk started crying. And the Sahaba, they say that we heard the trunk of the tree crying like a baby sobs, like a baby cries. That's how we heard it crying. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then approached it and said, "Would you not like to be with me in Jannah?" But there's many different miracles of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the biggest miracle of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the Quran. Every Nabi was given a miracle suiting his time. For example, Musa alayhi salam was sent in such a time where magic was at its peak. The better magic a person knew, the better or the higher this person was. So when Musa alayhi salam gave Fir'aun and the people of Bani Israel the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they doubted it at first, they ignored it at first. So obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala backs the Nabi up with certain mu'jizat. And since magic was at its peak, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed Musa alayhi salam with the mu'jizat that when he throws his staff, it becomes a snake. Also the white hand, his hand used to glow. But when Fir'aun called the people, he called the magicians to debate Musa alayhi salam, to go to verse Musa alayhi salam. Musa alayhi salam's snake ate all their other snakes, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes in the Quran. But after Musa alayhi salam passed away, that mu'jiza also was finished. In Isa alayhi salam's time, medical and to specialize in medicine was at its peak. The bigger the doctor you were, the greater the person you were. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Isa alayhi salam the mu'jiza of reviving the dead bi'idhnillah, with the order and permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, if someone was blind, Isa alayhi salam would put his hand over his eyes and he would be able to see. Not a blind person who had sight and then became blind, but a person who was born blind. Isa alayhi salam was able to give him sight. by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are mu'jizat, so that people can see that this person is not a joke, he's not just claiming things, he's actually a messenger from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But after Isa alayhi salam passed away, that mu'jiza also was finished. But Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's miracle is such that even after he passes away, the Quran is still here in front of us. And the challenges that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in front of us here, as we have just translated this ayah, is still in front of us to this day. And no one to this day has been able to produce a surah like that of the Quran. So this is a living example, a living miracle that was given to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ, and if you are in doubt. Notice here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala used the word rayb. There's two or more words, two famous words that can be used to translate doubt. One is shak. In Urdu we also say shak. If you are in doubt, shak meho, right? Is also in Arabic. And the second one is rayb. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preferred rayb over shak, because rayb is such a doubt that's built off of ignorance. That's built off of ignorance for no reason. Hesitation. If you are in doubt, mimma nazzalna, regarding that thing which we have revealed, ala abdina, upon our servant. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling here Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam his servant. Fa'tu bi suratin min mithli, then bring a surah like it. In Arabic grammar, a word that has alif lam on it is made specific and khas. It's not general. But over here in bisuratin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not bring the alif lam. He didn't say fa'tu bis surah. Fa'tu bisuratin. This is nakira in nahwi terms, in Arabic grammar terms. And this is general. We understand when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought this very general, that this is referring to any surah, whether big or small. If he said fa'tu bis surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be talking about a specific surah. But bisuratin, general, bring any surah. So this can be, this is also a challenge for the smallest surah in the Quran. قُلْ اللَّهُ أَحَدٍ أَعْطَيْنَا وَالْعَصْرِ أَلَمْ تَرَ كَيْفَ.
What is the meaning of nakira that you just said?
Nakira is not general. Is general. Ma'rifa in nahwi terms is something that's khas. For example, I say, the man came. I'm talking about a specific person. And if I say, a man came, this is general, someone came, any man. Over here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses nakira, bring any surah. Min mithli, like that of the Quran. Now what does like the Quran mean? We will just get to that in a second. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says that if you're not able to do so by yourself, وَدْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُمْ, bring your supporters, bring your helpers. You can have meetings, international meetings, to bring some surah like that of the Quran. You won't be able to do so. In kuntum sadiqeen, if you are truthful in what you're saying, that this is not the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if someone tries to produce something like the Quran, what things will he need in his literature to come close to the Quran? This is another discussion and topic. Number one, I'll name some. There are many. Number one is that Quran is incomparable to its concisiveness. The Quran is very concise and has many different meanings inside of it. For example, Surah Alam Tara Kayfa, Surah Al-Fil. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a very short surah talks about such a great historical event that took place, where Abraha, the ruler of Yemen, he wanted to make his own Kaaba in Yemen, and he was very jealous that hundreds and thousands of people used to go to Mecca and make tawaf of the Kaaba. Why don't they come to Yemen in my place and make tawaf of the Kaaba I'm going to build? So he took with him a large army with elephants, and his sole intention was to demolish the Kaaba. As he was going towards the Kaaba, it's a long story, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects his house by sending birds. Now you see here, this man is coming with such a great army. He's not giving any notice to the people. His intention is to demolish the Kaaba, and he's mounted on such huge animals. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, total opposite, sends down one of the smallest creatures, small birds, an army of birds with small pebbles in their mouths. And this army of birds was able to kill this great army of the people that are mounted on these elephants. And some riwayat state that the pebbles, when they were thrown by the birds, they were of such speed, it was like bullets, that it would hit the elephant on his back and come out of his stomach.
Wow.
This is some of the riwayat. But nevertheless, this is showing the qudra of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in such a small surah, Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashabil fil. Do you not see what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did with ashabul fil, the people of the elephants? What's the next ayah? Alam yaj'al kaydahum fi tadlil. Did not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala totally flip their kayd, their plot against the Kaaba? Wa arsala alayhim tayran ababil. And He sent upon them birds. So not only is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala quoting an historical event, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving a lesson. Alam tara kayfa, do you not see? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pointing towards His qudra, that is capable upon doing anything. Just now, I told you, I think 2 weeks ago, that there was a person on Facebook who calls himself, what was his name? Abu Lahab al-Murtad. And so he was talking to me about making something like the Quran. I asked him, actually the conversation started off where he was supporting the Draw Muhammad Day. They had a day where they would draw Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And now obviously everyone is going to draw him according to what he thinks of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Someone thinks he's a killer, someone thinks something else. And so we happened to get into a discussion where I told him the same challenge. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِمَّا نَزَّلْنَا. If you are in doubt, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ, bring a surah, like the Quran. So he told me that this challenge doesn't make sense, because this challenge came down in a time where Arabs were in a minority. So you expect all of us to learn Arabic just to confront the Quran, just to bring something like the Quran. So I said this is not only in Arabic. As long as you can make something in any language that comes close to the Quran, in these many different things that the Quran has in itself. This person writes 5 couplets regarding Fatima radiallahu anha. And in these 5 couplets, he was only explaining Fatima radiallahu anha, and it was things that you would laugh at. I mean, why he said something like, she had enemies and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would be displeased with her enemies because she had enemies, and he tried to rhyme it in some weird manner. And I presented before him the Suratul Fil, Alam Tara Kayfa, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about such a great incident, such a lengthy topic. The story is very lengthy, where Abraha goes to Abdul Muttalib, and he tells him that I'm going to destroy the Kaaba. And Abdul Muttalib then said that, would you want sheep and cows and instead of breaking our Kaaba? And then he said no. And then Abdul Muttalib said that, this is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect it. It was a very lengthy. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only did He mention a piece of history, but He mentioned with it a lesson. And in many things this person was failing to bring something like the Quran. Many things were missing. Also in history, maybe about 600 years ago, there was a person, an Arab poet, who tried to bring something like Suratul Fil. I gave you the story about Inna A'tainaka al-Kawthar, right? Where the Arabs called this great poet to challenge, to make something like Inna A'tainaka al-Kawthar. And so hundreds and thousands of people gathered around the Kaaba, and they put Surah Al-Kawthar on top of the Kaaba. They hung it on the Kaaba, and they called this very great poet. When this poet came, many people were anticipating to see what this person is going to write, as this poet had the pen in his ear. This person was staring at the surah, and he was staring at his paper. And everyone was waiting for that time where he pulls out the pen from his ear and he writes something like this, like Surah Al-Kawthar. Did I hear the story? I did, right? Just quickly go over it. So, these people were now waiting for this poet to bring something like the Quran. And he wasn't able to do so for a long time. They were waiting for 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. But again, they could bear this. They could bear it because this is something that was breaking family ties. Islam, when it came, a father would accept Islam and the son would not be Muslim. Or the son would be Muslim and the father would not be Muslim. So they were ready for the whole day if the poet took the whole day to write something like the Quran. They didn't mind. But when the poet took the pen out of his ear and he started to write, now people were extremely happy. But to the amazement, what did the poet write? Inna a'tainaka al-Kawthar. He copied the first ayah. And in the second ayah he said, Ma hadha qawl al-bashar. That this can't be the word of man. This has to be the word from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So similarly, another poet tried to compare something like, he tried to bring something like Surah Al-Fil, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains this large topic. And in the same amount of couplets, this man only explained how an elephant looks. Alam tara kayfa fa'ala rabbuka bi ashab al-fil. This is what this person wrote. Al-fil mal-fil. Wa ma adraka mal-fil. Dhanbin qasir wa kurhun tawil. This is what this person wrote. Al-fil mal-fil. Elephant, elephant. Do you know what an elephant is all about? It has a short tail and a long trunk. This is what this person was. Number one, he tried to make it rhyme like the Quran. He failed to do so even in that. Number two, there's no lesson. In 5 couplets where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or in a couple couplets where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains a large story, a great story, a historical event, He explains how an elephant looks. So, many people in their times try to compare or bring something like the Quran. So number one is that it's very concise. It's very concise. Number two is its eloquence. Its eloquence. We should remember that the people of Rasulullah, the kuffar in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were ready to kill the Prophet if they were given an opportunity. Whether it's in battles, and we know the story where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was invited to a da'wah, an invitation to eat, and he was at a place where there was a mountain right behind him. And so the kuffar of that time planned to drop a huge boulder on top of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So any opportunity these people were given, they were ready to use it to kill Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But this challenge was still there in front of them. They were still not able to produce something like the Quran. So even these people fell short in bringing something like the Quran. In fact, something very strange. People, the kuffar of that time, used to admit that we can't bring anything like the Quran, whether in public or to themselves. In fact, there are many historical riwayat and narrations where an enemy like Abu Jahl used to actually sometimes go to the house of Prophet ﷺ in the darkness of the night and used to hide behind the wall and used to listen to Rasulullah ﷺ recite the Quran. And he would tell his people the next day that I couldn't leave Rasulullah ﷺ reciting due to its beauty. So Abu Jahl even kneeled before the eloquence of the Quran. The Quran is not only a book of historical facts. It also predicts many things. And those same things happened. For example, in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the 2 superpowers of that time, one was the Romans and the second were the Persians. The Romans and the Persians had a war between them. where the Persians overpowered the Romans. The Romans completely collapsed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Uloom said, Alif Lam Mim, غُلِبَتِ الرُّومِ في أدنى الأرض وهم من بعد غلبهم سيغلبون في بضع سنين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that in less than 10 years, the Romans will overpower the Persians. And the kuffar of that time thought it was impossible, as the Persians had completely defeated and crushed the Romans. And they had no way that the Romans can get back at the Persians. In that stipulated amount of time, in 10 years, the Romans and the Persians had a war, and the Romans beat the Persians. And to this, the kuffar couldn't say anything. So it also predicted many things. And in all those predictions and prophecies, it was true in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was saying. Also, the Quran has historical events. Many of the scriptures of the different Anbiya were missing this. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Ad, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Thamud, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Nuh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about Adam alayhi salam, and all these many different prophets, and the many things that happen to these prophets. Another thing is when someone recites the Quran, the voice he recites it in. The voice he recites it in. If you ever notice that if you're listening to a song, I'm not encouraging it, but many of us, when we're in Chuck E. Cheese or wherever, and we hear this, they have a rhythm to it. The musician, or the person who's singing that song, didn't randomly just sit there and just start reciting. It took him he wrote the lines, rappers write their lines out, they make their notes, where to make the drum go higher, where to make it go lower. And there's many different things that's required. And a song is not produced in a second. He doesn't just start singing, but it takes many weeks or even months to produce a song. But the Quran is such where every person that recites the Quran will recite it in a different tone. Will recite it in a different tone. And he recites it so well that, for example, we stand in Taraweeh for so long. In the month of Ramadan, we stand behind the Imam for so long. We have no idea what the Imam is reciting. We have no idea what the Imam is reciting. But if the Imam can recite it properly with tajweed, the man behind him can stand behind him for hours. Many of us have gone to Makkah al-Mukarramah and Medina, and we're behind the Imam and Sheikh Sudais or Shuraim or whoever the Imam is reciting something. We can stand there forever, hearing what this Imam is reciting. Yet we don't understand one letter what this person is saying. If you put this in any other scripture, book, music, speech, you won't find this. If I am delivering a speech in Chinese, and if you don't understand Chinese, you will leave. If I'm singing a Chinese song, you don't understand it, you're going to leave. But in the case of the Quran has such beauty that even if you don't understand the Quran, there is such beauty where you can't separate from the Quran. Our teacher once told us a story where a French musician, I have his name in my notes, I don't know his name, I forgot his name. But this great French musician was once walking by a masjid. This is about 100 years ago. He's walking by a masjid where he hears some music coming from the masjid. So this music was of such nature that it caught this musician's attention. He went to see who's singing this. And he goes towards the masjid, and there's a large amount of people around someone reciting something. To him, he was singing. So he asked some people that, what is this person singing? Who is he? So everyone, they put their hands to their mouths and said, be quiet right now, this person is reciting. You can ask us after he's done. So this person sat down till this person was done singing. When this person was done, he asked him, who is this person? What's he saying? So they said that this person is reading the Quran. He's not singing, he's actually doing tilawah. He's doing qira'ah of the Quran. This person, without hesitation, went to that person and he said, make me Muslim. I'm ready to accept Islam. And this person then says, after taking the Shahada, he says that I am a master of, how would you say, making the notes of the music. How do they say? Composing. How they say, there's many different dhuns, right? Dhun they say? Many different rhythms. And I'm a master on making, I can make rhythms that no person can ever make. But when I see the rhythms this person is making, none of what we have composed is able to come close to how this person is reciting. And really, when we hear an imam reciting with a beautiful voice, you can stand. Once, when I had to lead Tarawih in Philadelphia, I was called to this very nice masjid. The masjid is called Masjid al-Aqsa. It's an Egyptian masjid. And I was called to do tahajjud, to lead qiyamul layl. I thought it was a different masjid. I was located in a different masjid, and the tahajjud was taking place in a different masjid. And a large masjid. The parking lot is, enormous. Enormous. Anyways, I thought to myself that there was about 30 people doing i'tikaf in that masjid. I thought there was going to be 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 people, max 100, coming for that tahajjud salah. When I went to the masjid, the entire parking lot was filled. The entire parking lot. And I was still not ready to believe that all these people are here for that tahajjud salah. Maybe it was a different event and they borrowed the parking lot. When I went inside the masjid, the entire masjid was packed. In fact, not going inside the masjid, there were people outside of the masjid. They had put many different rugs and all that outside of the masjid in the parking lot. And they had me lead the tahajjud, the qiyamul layl. There were about 900 to 1,300 people in that gathering. And 80% of those people in that gathering were people who couldn't understand Arabic. They're either Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Indians, or Sri Lankans, or whatever else they had. So 70 to 80% of those people were people who didn't even understand. And the imam of that masjid, who was Egyptian, he told me that I'm going to lead 2 rakahs, you're going to lead 2 rakahs. In our 2 rakahs, we're going to be leading approximately half a juz. In the first rakah, we're going to be reciting quarter juz, and the second quarter. So these people, what brings these people that don't understand what the imam is going to be reciting? And what time was this salah? This salah was 2:30 in the morning. What brings these people to the masjid? 2:30 in the morning. The next day, they don't know if they have to fast or they have to fast. Actually, they call it what do they call it? Laylatul Qadr. For the Arabs, they call it 27. They call it Laylatul Qadr. So what brings them 2:30 in the morning when they know they're going to have to work tomorrow? They also have to fast tomorrow. They don't understand what the imam is going to be reciting, and they know that for this long we're going to have to be reciting, standing behind the imam, and a couple hours before that salah they have tarawih. Again, this is only the mu'jiza and the honor we have been giving as the followers of Muhammad ﷺ in the Quran. The Quran never gets old. The Quran never gets old. If I was to sing for you something over and over 5 times a day, you would get tired of it. No matter how pleasing and how good that song is, if I was to sing for you that song over and over, you would get tired of it. Or a speech. If you were to hear a speech over and over, you would get tired of it. But we recite the Quran 5 times at least. Not 5 times. In every rak'ah we recite in the Quran. And not only do we have fara'id, we have sunan, we have nawafil, we have tahajjud, we have so many different things. But we still don't get tired of the Quran. So this is something that's been given only to the Quran, not any other speech. Another thing is that this Quran is protected. And we talked about this earlier, and I think in Surah Baqarah when we started. How this Quran is protected. Any other speech or song is never protected the way the Quran is protected. 1400 plus years, the Quran was revealed to Rasulullah ﷺ, 1400 plus years ago. In 1400 years, can you imagine the things that take place? 1400 years, so many things take place. If you were to leave this city and come back 5 years later, you will see that this market has closed, this store has opened. If you come back maybe 20, 30 years later, you will see that even your neighbors have moved. If you come back 100 years later, you might find that the currency has changed. If you come back in a more longer time, you will see that the river that used to be flowing by your door has now been dry. And the dry land, the place that you would think that water will never come to this place, has now a river flowing in it. But 1400 plus years, what didn't take place on the planet? But this Quran is preserved the way it was sent down to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Not an i'rab, not a fatha, dhamma, kasra, zabar, zair, pesh, wow here, and alif there, was changed in the Quran. As we have millions of people in every era that have memorized the Quran. A person that's 6 to 7, to a person that's 70, 80, and all in between have memorized the Quran. So in many ways the Quran is unique. So if you have someone, this is such a challenge where you can, wow, is that really 9:10? This is such a challenge. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ. What ayah number is this? 22. 20? 23. No, 22. وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِمَّا نَزَّلْنَا. 22.
No, that's 23.
23? Okay, maybe they started off. This Quran's translation is in, I don't know what language. Some other language. Maybe they have it. Anyways, this ayah is a challenge that you can put in front of any person that doubts the Quran. The person can say whatever he wants. All you have to tell him is that bring something like the Quran. That's all. Whether it's in English, in Spanish, in French, he won't be able to do so. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, and if you do not bring something like the Quran, وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا, and you will never be able to bring something like the Quran, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارُ الَّتِي, then fear that fire, وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةِ, such a fire which its fuel, waqud, its fuel is النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةِ, people and stones. أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ, it has been prepared for the non-believers. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ने अभी फरमाया कि इसकी एक जैसी सूरत लाओ. तो Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala फरमाया فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا, बस अगर वो ना करें, وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا, और हरगिज़ ना कर सकेंगे, فَاتَّقُوا النَّارَ الَّتِي, बस डरो उस आग से, وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ, जिसका ईंधन लोग और पत्थर हैं, أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ, जो तैयार की गई है कुफ़ार के लिए. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that those people who, after trying to challenge the Quran and are not able to do so, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will never be able to do so, and they still reject Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they in the akhirah will be fuel to light Jahannam. وَقُودُهَا النَّاسُ وَالْحِجَارَةُ أُعِدَّتْ لِلْكَافِرِينَ. Now for the people that believe, وَبَشِّرِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, and give glad tidings to those who bring iman. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, again, bringing iman is not enough. You can't just say kalima and just sit and relax and expect to go to Jannah. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and they do righteous deeds. أَنَّ لَهُمْ, what glad tiding do you give them? أَنَّ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٍ, that for them there are gardens. تَجْرِي مِن تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارِ, that beneath it they have rivers flowing. كُلَّمَا رُزِقُوا مِنْهَا, every time they are given rizq from it, min thamaratin, from a fruit, qalu, they say, هَذَا الَّذِي رُزِقْنَا مِنْ قَبَلٍ, this is something that has been given to us before. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wherever He talks about Jannah in the Quran, He usually says that there are rivers flowing. And this is something that always catches our sight. Why is the Taj Mahal so great? Why is it so beautiful? I bet you if they didn't have that pond in front of it, it wouldn't have looked as beautiful. It has a nice pond in front of it. A nice, whatever you want, a reservoir in front of it. So rivers flowing is always something that catches the attention of man. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that we have such mansions in Jannah where we have rivers flowing. And remember, we can't, wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes Jannah, this is just to give us a touch or a feeling of what Jannah will look like. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that Jannah is such a place that ma la aynun ra'at, that any eye has never seen such something like it. Wala udhunun sami'at, and no ear has ever heard the real characteristics of Jannah. Wala khatara ala qalbi bashar, and no person was able to even imagine in his wildest imagination how Jannah will even look. So this is just to describe how Jannah will look. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُلَّمَا رُزِقُوا مِنْهَا, every time they will be given rizq from it, they will say, قَالُوا هَذَا الَّذِي رُزِقْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ, the people of Jannah will say that this is something that has been given to us before. There are two tafsirs in this ayah. One is that we will have only one type of fruit in regards to its shape in Jannah. And every time a person in Jannah is giving this, he's been given this fruit, he will say that this is similar to what I have been given before, but the taste is going to be different. The second tafsir, which is more accepted, is that we're not talking about two types or many types of fruits in Jannah. The people of Jannah will say that, for example, we have an apple here. Something that resembles an apple will be given to us in Jannah, but have a totally different taste. This is the more accepted tafsir. Why? Because if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was to give us fruits that we never seen in our life, we would never even think about holding that fruit. For example, we go in a Chinese market, we see all these weird nasty things. These snails and whatnot, you have different type of fruits. We never pick them up because we're not used to it. We never tasted it, we never seen it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to bring us closer to those fruits, will make a fruit that resembles the fruit of this dunya. But the taste will be something totally different. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُلَّمَا رُزِقُوا مِنْهَا, every time they are given the rizq from it, مِنْ ثَمَرَةِ الرِّزْقَ, from fruits, قَالُوا هَذَا الَّذِي, they will say that this thing, رُزِقْنَا مِنْ قَبْلِ, has been provided to us before. وَأُتُوا بِهِ مُتَشَابِهًا, and they will be given something that resembles it. وَلَهُمْ فِيهَا أَزْوَاجٌ مُطَهَّرَةٌ, and this is something that, وَلَهُمْ فِيهَا أَزْوَاجٌ مُطَهَّرَةٌ, and they will have pure wives, pure clean wives in Jannah. وَهُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ, and they will be in Jannah forever. Khalidun, forever. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said they will have pure wives. Well, there's many things that would turn us off if we wake up next to our wife, and if they, for example, if a girl in this dunya, a lady in this dunya, always have defects, always have many different defects, and there's always something that they're worried about, that we gotta look presentable in front of our husbands. But the women of Jannah are of such nature that they never grow old, they never have wrinkles, and they're fresh forever and ever. وَلَهُمْ فِيهَا أَزْوَاجٌ مُطَهَّرَةٌ, and they also don't spoil your mood. The women of today can spoil your mood. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that a wife who passes away in such a state where her husband is pleased with her, there is no reward for that lady but Jannah. So many emphasis is given for the women to be kind. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that majority, in regards to men and women, majority of the dwellers of Jahannam will be women. Will be women. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself gives the reason. He said that the husband provides for his family and he worked extremely hard to bring bread on the table for his family. And the lady usually, if that lady is of such type, she will say, if she sees something wrong in the husband, that from you I have never seen any khair in my entire life. So there the husband is stabbed with an invincible knife in his heart. So this is not against women by any chance, but this is just saying that women can say things that can sometimes hurt the husband. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in many places, and Rasul has given us the teachings where there should be a balance between the husband and wife. There has to be a balance. The husband shouldn't be, we talked about the hadith I think last week, the husband shouldn't make small things as a platform to debate against his wife and to argue with his wife. And similarly, the wife should be of such understanding that, if the husband is going through something, you should watch your mouth before the husband. And great importance Islam has given to the family life and how to run a family life. Umar radiallahu ta'ala says that the biggest politics is in the house. The biggest politics happens in the house. And which is true. I'm not married yet, but all of you are. Right? But again, this is from both sides. This is from both sides. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَلَهُمْ فِيهَا أَزْوَاجٌ مُطَهَّرَةٌ وَهُمْ فِيهَا خَالِدُونَ. And a glad tidings to the wives of the brothers here that are present. The wives that are pious and that support the husband and give a good upbringing to the children, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Jannah will make them the queen of all the different girls and the women that your husband is going to get. Right? He makes them the queen. And this is not a small and ordinary honor. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises to make someone a queen, what else do you want? When Allah Himself says, in the world we fight for who's going to be the next president or the king or the queen. And when someone is a king or a president, not everyone is happy with him. Not everyone is happy. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes upon the responsibility to make our wives a queen in Jannah, this has to be something indeed very great. I think we'll stop it up to here, inshallah. Basically, we went over until ayah number 25. In the portion we read, again, this is an open challenge. We will have these events take place where we have people on Facebook or different events, Burn the Quran Day, how we had before, or Draw the Muhammad Day, or these many different days. And always people are going to confront you. Always people are going to confront our religion. As we discussed in the last dars, that this is actually a sign of defeat for them. That when they can't take Islam and the love of Islam away from our hearts, the only thing they can do is talk bad about it. This is actually how a scholar put it. This is actually, you know how we measure how hot or cold the water is when we put the temperature, thing down to measure how hot it is? This is what they do. They just want to measure how much love Muslims still have for the deen. And they throw in a joke, or they throw in a Draw Muhammad Day. So, we should be at ease and totally know that this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if someone gets too mouthy in front of you, all you tell them is that Quran has an open challenge for the people, for all times, and you bring something like the Quran, and you can tell him and you can dare him the most unimaginable thing. Unimaginable thing. I'll give you my car. Here's my keys. If you bring something like the Quran, I promise you, they will never be able to do so. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the tawfiq and understanding. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us all Jannatul Firdaus. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all the wives the queen in Jannah. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.